Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hello, everybody. We're just about to start. I might give another 30 seconds for people to join and connect to their Zoom. As we know, some people tend to have some Zoom issues. Looking forward to a great conversation. So I'll get started in about 1 minute. Fantastic. The numbers are continuing to increase. Good to see. It'll be an exciting conversation we will have today. So let's get started. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this amazing webinar hosted by RandomWalks. Today we'll be talking about leading through AI disruption and redefining skills, vision, and growth. I've got two amazing panelists with me today, which I will introduce. And then following that, I will put a quick poll up on the screen, which I would love everybody to fill out. And then following that, I will start some questions to both Joe and Cyril. We'll aim to go for 45 minutes in total, and roughly around the 30-minute mark, I will look out for questions that come through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you have. And then towards the end, I'll allow a good 10, perhaps even 15 minutes for us to table those questions. So without further ado, let's get started. And by the way, this session is being recorded. So my first guest is Jo Driscoll-Carney. I'm very happy to have met Jo. She's renowned for expertise in global HR leadership at large-scale change management, and she excels at cultivating high-performing teams across sectors, driving organizational excellence. Jo's worked across various sectors across North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, leading learning and leadership initiatives for major global organizations. Currently, Jo is the Global Head of Learning and Leadership Development at Majid Al Futtaim. She's also Chief Learning Officer, a council member at the World Economic Forum, which is amazing. And she's also the member of Harvard McLean Medical School of Coaching. She also happens to be a board advisor, coach. She's ex-Meta and ex-Accenture. So it's a pleasure to have you with us, Jo.
Thank you.
And we have Dr. Cyril Gabriel. So Cyril is a great friend and colleague of mine. He is a CFO Awards panelist with over 20 years of experience as a strategic executive at global corporations. Cyril has led incredible business transformations, overseeing various portfolios across various sectors, and he holds many of the portfolios at the company that we both work at. He's known for his commitment to mentoring and developing teams, and he's consistently fostered environments that promote professional growth and high performances. He is the Chief Operating Officer and CFO at Academy XI, we're an education company. He's also happens to be a director at Rosebank College in Australia, which both Cyril and I are from. And he's an ex-senior policy advisor at the Australian Federal Treasury. And he holds many credentials in front of him, too many acronyms to count, but including fellow CPA, FIPA, FFA, and he's also a chartered accountant. He also holds a doctoral degree from Australian Catholic University, and is also a corporate director certificate from Harvard Business School. So welcome, and thanks for joining us, Cyril.
Thank you, Amir. Nice to meet you all.
Likewise. And lastly, but my intro is going to be very short. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Academy XI. As I mentioned, we're an education company. I've worked in the design field for over 25 years, building and growing and scaling human-centered design and design thinking capability in technology, corporate, enterprise, and professional services companies. I teach innovation at university at a postgraduate level, and I've held director positions at many companies as well. But today is not about me. Now, before we get started, I was actually going to joke and try and learn how to say hello in a few languages because we've got people from all over the world. But the list of countries from where people are joining us is way beyond my ability to be able to learn those languages quickly. But we have people from United Arab Emirates, we have from Dubai, Ethiopia, Kuwait, Nepal, Nigeria, Sweden, United States, Canada, Ireland and Germany, Oman, and obviously the best country of all, Australia, which, as I said, where Cyril and I are from. But I'm not going to have a go at saying hello in those languages. So without further ado, as I mentioned, I'm going to put a quick poll out on Zoom. It should appear on your screen as we speak. So if you can take a moment and fill out these 3 questions, and I'll read it out for the rest of the audience as well. So the first question we would love to know is, what is the biggest challenge your leadership faces with AI adoption? Second question is, which approach do you think is most effective for building an AI-ready workforce? And the third and final question is, what is most critical for fostering a culture of AI innovation? So I'll give you a moment to complete. We have 86 attendees so far. We've had 9 people already completed, so fantastic. And then I will share the results immediately afterwards. Now, as I said, Joe is actually joining us from Cairo, Egypt, and Cyril is currently in Sydney, and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. So we are truly an international webinar today. So as the results are coming in, we're roughly around the 43% mark. For the first question, what is the biggest challenge your leadership faces with AI adoption? We have a close tie between lack of AI knowledge and integrating AI with existing processes. And that's quite consistent from the polls that we take when we run AI workshops for our enterprise clients. But I'm sure both Joe and Cyril will have an opinion on this as well. Let's look at the second question. Which approach do you think is most effective for building an AI-ready workforce? And at the moment, both A and B are winning, which means a combination of upskilling existing employees and hiring for specific AI skill sets. So part education and building capability by hiring. Great. Well, we've got 60% completion. Third question. What is most critical for fostering a culture of AI innovation? Seems to be the outright leader. Well, all of the above. So the next leading category is encouragement of experimentation. So getting individuals to experiment with sort of emerging technologies such as AI. Second being, again, upskilling employees. So all about training and professional development. And the last one is leadership buy-in and support. So fantastic. So it seems like education seems to be the way forward. We have roughly 61% completing the poll, hitting 62, if it's okay. Actually, I'm just curious, maybe Joe, while we wait for the poll to complete, do you have any thoughts on this before I sort of go into those questions?
I think it's a really excellent point. You can see it coming up in the poll around experimentation. I think we have to have a little bit of epistemic humility here. We may be in the hype cycle, but for sure, this is completely unprecedented in terms of the way in which our work, our lives, and the way in which we kind of lead and learn in the flow of life will change. And there is a little bit of experimentation around it, but the question is, how is that experimentation safe? Because we know that AI is as biased as those that create it. So how are we doing it in ways that are creating the safety and connections that people need in the current emergent era?
Good point. Cyril, what's your thoughts on the notion of experimentation?
I think from the polls that are coming in and from the initial results, it's quite clear where our thinking is around AI. There's a lot of hesitation to Joe's point around how do we use it ethically? What does it sort of impact us in the long run? Is it going to align with our business strategy? So there's a lot of hesitation. So to that point, I do believe a lot of education and upskilling and reskilling is very essential before we delve into what that AI implementation looks in businesses.
No, that's a really good point. What I might do, I might keep the poll up because some people are still answering the question. And then once I see we get about the 80% mark, I will close the poll and show the results. Right, let's get into the formalities. I'll start with you, Joe. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, with your background in leadership development and organizational change, how do you see the role of leadership evolving in the face of AI?
Look, I'm optimistic, I would say. I feel very strongly that AI can make us better leaders, but I'm very cautious about the impact that can have as well. It's such a major inflection point for leaders. AI, like any other tool you can think of, can be an amplifier, but that means it has the potential to do both great harm and great good in the world of work. And I've been very excited by the research, which says that we are on the precipice of this very exciting era in human leadership. Um, but I think it needs a little bit of recalibration because in this age, leaders really are becoming the paragon of what it means to be more human at work. And with AI, we're now elevated to really have a prime task of creating these really important moments of connection, these experiences, at kind of these integral moments that matter in careers. You know, humans are just so good, I think, at inventing tools that change the way we work, change the way that we live. But then adapting to those changes, that's been the sticking point. You know, if you think about, like, I don't know, the internet and this instant access to gigabytes of data, but yet we're more distracted. Or we have social media, we can be more connected than ever, right? That's the theory. But yet so many people are kind of alienated and isolated. And we have this history of making all these great time-saving technologies. But then what do we do? Do we fill the void with more work? And I think the answer really lies in leaders framing themselves as being AI augmented leaders. And it really talks about the knowledge piece that was coming up in the poll there, Amir. The AI augmented leader really is the one who integrates AI into their leadership in ways that enhances it. You know, if you think about the quality of, I don't know, like wisdom, you know, humans leverage insight, experience, critical thinking to ask good questions. But AI excels at providing answers, you know, with enormous amounts of data. So you can see an AI augmented leader manifesting here with the wisdom to ask really good questions while discerning the answers that AI can give us. And, you know, I think it's really going back to safe experimentation and education. You follow the data, you do your research, you experiment with it, you fail, you learn from that failure safely, and explore what your new type of leadership is going to be with AI as your intern.
No, that's really great. I love the whole notion of AI augmented leadership. And we often talk about AI needs to be, still have humans at the center, right? Like human centeredness. So that's really great. Question I had for you, Cyril, was you touched on it when we were talking about the poll around ensuring AI strategy vision has alignment at the strategic level. What do you think is crucial for leadership to set a clear AI vision that sort of aligns with business objectives?
Good question, Amir. This goes back to the recent report that I read from the Tech Council of Australia, where it said currently in Australia, there are 33,000 people employed doing various work in AI-related portfolios. But we predict and forecast that's going to increase to 200,000 by 2030. Putting on my CFO hat, that's a 35% growth year on year to reach that target. Which goes back to saying, how many of those businesses really do require that AI implementation and integration in their business? And how ethically and how cost effectively can businesses do? So I think this goes back to Joe's point of having those leaders think about the strategic direction from a business perspective with a human-centered sort of policy and plan, which drives innovation within those enterprises. At the core of it, you can have all the fancy tech and gadget in the business if people cannot adapt, use, and drive customer success, right? At the end of the day, all our enterprises, all our businesses are out there to provide the best value and the best service to our customers. And how will AI sort of improve that ability? I do believe AI will support businesses in sort of scaling up, growing, and alongside people. And people are required to provide that empathy and the creativeness, the design aspect of integrating such technology into your enterprise. That's very crucial. And as leaders, I also believe that we need to set that strategic direction that sort of aligns broadly with the business as well. So what is required? So like we did with the poll, I think that's a good way to go in the organization to find out what are the skills gap? What do we really need? Who are the people that need to sort of adapt these new AI technologies within the business? And part of the budget. And also it's a holistic approach as leaders. I think it's not about just the technology, the policies and the budgets for it, but how do we keep in using those AI technologies in a moral frame that aligns with closely with the business objectives as well. So and how do we mitigate those risks that could arise from implementing such technology? So I believe it's very crucial for businesses and the leaders to sort of have that human-centric thinking along with their growth and strategic direction.
Can I just expand on that? And I'll probably pose this for both of you. So I've always thought this notion of, if you think AI as an agnostic tool and enabler, that question could be, how do you ensure leadership set a clear, emerging technology vision that aligns with business objectives? Do you think it's too simplistic, Cyril, to say that AI, like any emerging technology, when we had cloud, when we had Web 2, Web 3, we've got mobile, and now we've got augmented reality, would you say that the approach and the importance of aligning a business vision is important with any emerging tech, irrespective if it's AI or not an AI, or do we need to pay even more attention because of the complexities of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Amir. I think it's about how well the technology integrates with the human. So I think there needs to be some sort of a roadmap on how well the system integrates. It's not like you're adapting a new CRM and says, hey, everyone, we've got a new CRM and let's get on with it. I think AI is a bit more, requires a bit more approachable, like the learnings and the skills that are required to operate it is a much higher than just reading through some procedure document from a CRM to sort of access it. So from that perspective, I do believe to ensure alignment, there needs to be a roadmap on how the technology is going to be implemented within the business. And obviously, the other aspect of the thing is to invest in talent, right? How well you can sort of train and skill those people in using them. A typical example could be schools these days are looking at how they can implement ethically to give access to students, even in year 11 and year 12, to start using AI, because it is out there and it is available to people for free, how well you can implement it into the system. So as leaders, I believe to stay ahead of that and actually start thinking about how well you can pave that way and the roadmap for the business to sort of integrate into its daily business as usual processes.
Joe, what about you? Do you think it's too simplistic to think that AI is like any other emerging technology and the strategies and processes to align with, vision and objectives within the business goal, the same approach needs to be taken, or?
Well, you mentioned you had some guests on today from Germany, and when I lived in Germany, one of my favorite words was "jein," which is a portmanteau of yes and no. And I find it's something I say a lot at work these days, given the unpredictability of this era. I think that, like I said, there needs to be a level of humility that we have to have around this. We can follow all the industry advisory, listen to all the Sam Altmans, all the podcasts on this, but the reality is we just don't know how far and how big this can go. And I think we need to say, as a result, what got us here won't get us there. But I think you're always onto a winning strategy in business if you're getting buy-in in HR from the business on implementing AI, if you're trying to procure new AI tool sets, if you're trying to integrate AI by always linking to your business strategy and KPIs. That's never going to be a bad idea. So on the one hand, I think it's appreciating this is very new, it will change a lot. But at the same time, first principles still apply. And we can't lose in a hype cycle, you can easily lose your head. And I think it's important to stay grounded.
And I love that you mentioned in the hype cycle, because we're very much at the early stages, even though you could argue that, OpenAI's first tools were around, 2 years ago, but we've had AI for a very long time. Thank you. Now, I'm just going to quickly end the poll. We had 74% complete. So I'm going to share the results on the screen for everybody else to see as well. So the biggest challenge seems to be integrating with AI with existing processes, followed very closely by lack of AI knowledge. In terms of question 2, approaches to make sure we're effectively building AI-ready workforces. Education is obviously key, and then small proportion of hiring internally. That might change, obviously, as people start to build that skills. And then the most critical for fostering a culture of AI innovation seems to be, encouragement of experimentation, upskilling, and leadership buy-in. So thank you very much, everybody, for sharing these results, and we'll continue to obviously share them post this event. So, Joe, second question. Now, I'm going to share some stats, obviously, for the audience. The World Economic Forum estimates that 50% of all workers will need reskilling by 2025 due to automation and AI. And actually, I recently came across another research that said 79% of executives fear that their workforce is unprepared for the future of work with this new emerging technology. So question I was going to propose to you is, what specific advice can you offer organizations and people joining us today in terms of tackling this challenge and preparing their workforce for the future, given we've seen that education is obviously a key component?
Yeah, this is a really important question. Simply put, preparing your workforce for the future, whether it's AI or anything else, just makes good business sense. And doing this through employee development is critical. And organizations, just to share back some stats as you kindly offered some, organizations that prioritize employee development to prepare the workforce for the future, they just see higher engagement and productivity. Gallup would tell you it can be as much as 30% higher employee engagement. And if you think about that, if you have an organization, let's just say 50,000 people, and you lose 5% of them because they're not learning, you're not preparing them for the future. And we know maybe on average it takes $20,000 to replace a person in your workforce. You better be ready to be losing about 50 million a year in not preparing your workforce for the future. And that's a really sobering statistic. And the reality is that the workforce of the future for organizations will be led by your leaders. And unfortunately, and it's hard to believe we're still here, but many organizations just haven't figured out how to fully develop their prospective leaders. And it limits people's advancement, and it ultimately leads to turnover. I mean, again, just to go back to Gallup, some of the stats are wild. Around 50% of US managers feel disconnected from their jobs. 55% are looking for outside opportunities. And this problem cascades down. You have I remember Indeed.com, which is one of the most, popular US search websites, says 71% of employees are looking or actively hunting for a new job. And as we've said, low engagement, high turnover, they're so costly. And if we could just spend some time to really performance needs analyze an organization and understand what people need, not just so we meet them where they are, but meet them where we can be, we can prevent this incredible waste of talent and create really more effective development programs. And I think the headline here, just to say it quickly, is that a scientific approach to talent development, where you look at your high potentials, you understand their growth and key competencies, preparing them for the future of work for themselves and for their teams, and giving them the support they need to succeed, is really the biggest source of competitive advantage for a potent future workforce for companies.
Yeah, it makes good business sense. Absolutely. And that's a good caveat, a good segue to the next question, Cyril, I had for you. And I think you know this stat as well. A report by Deloitte, just a small little global agency, and found that 70% of businesses believe a lack of critical skills is a barrier to AI adoption. It's pretty much echoing what Joe has said. In your experience, and obviously you're working in an education company at the moment, how can collaboration between training organizations and also businesses be fostered to create that more robust ecosystem to support that reskilling besides just the transactional, here's a training organization throwing training to a company? Have you seen that work well?
Yes, Samir. I think the way that I see this goes back to that question where the experimentation, right? As a business partner to the CEO, as a senior leader in the business, you don't want to be putting things on your LMS platforms and so on and say, yeah, now we've got AI. You can go through the process, have a read through it. That's not going to really develop. I think someone from the participant raised a good point. It's the as leaders and as organization, it's the responsibility lies within that department to pull the entire business up, right? At the end of the day, if you want to foster that collaboration, we do need to know sort of what the organization relies on and what is essential for the thing. And in an experimentation stage, I think most CFOs in the room would agree that you don't want to be spending a lot of money investing in developing a course that could be made redundant like 2 hours later. That's how fast AI is moving, right? In such a day and age, what you would want to do is collaborate with learning organizations that actually provide catered services to that respective business. And with AI, there's no one size fits all. And you need to have bespoke training, you need to have bespoke content. And also it's the industry expertise these learning organizations bring to the table. And they could have probably worked with a similar organization. The learnings from that could be brought and sort of implemented and help businesses scale. And maybe they worked with a larger organization, but the training requirements for smaller organizations are different. How well you can customize that, that's quite important. And also that synergies and bringing that collaboration with various industry partners. And I see the learning institutions being the conduit, sort of bringing all those synergies together and providing that additional support to organizations and saying, you don't have to do your own experimentation inside. We have our learnings and we can actually sort of bring those skills to the table and help your organization grow from that perspective. And some of the statistics from the AI CSIRO and says the biggest fear in an organization is people being made redundant. And if that's the biggest fear in an organization where people feel AI is going to take my job, I think as leaders and as businesses, it's the responsibility to show that AI is a tool at the end of the day that's going to help you grow. And professional development, as Joe mentioned, is quite important in any organization. So it's a three-way collaboration between the business, the employees, and the learning organizations to sort of bring those synergies together.
Yeah, great. You touched on the question, so I was going to pose that question, but I'm going to add to it, and we're going to go off script a little bit. I came across the statistics by ABC Australia that said, and I'm sure it's been touted everywhere else, that at the individual level, people have feared AI will replace your job. It's not, no, AI won't replace your job, but people who can use AI will, right? And this notion that, or even at the company level, the same thing, but that over the next 5 to 10 years, 23% of jobs will change. And that means 23% of roles will be made redundant, but 20% new roles and new jobs that we haven't thought of get created at the back of this emerging technology. So I guess staying up to date in terms of skills is important. But maybe, Joe, probably a question to you coming from a sort of HR and people culture background. I always, as a leader, I fostered a space where individuals can learn and grow, but ultimately I made the individual accountable for their own professional development and growth. And back to this question that Paul's asked here, it says, how much of the responsibility is on the individual versus the company for upskilling? Is there a tension there? Is there a thought concerning this technology is moving really quickly? Do we need to rely on individuals to pull their head out of the sand, or do we need to work top down and foster that learning?
Yeah. And thanks, Paul always chimes in with great questions. But it's a point that I think a lot about. And ultimately, my belief is that you need to own your own learning and be ruthless about it. And realize that learning is not just what happens in a classroom. And I know it's a little bit dated and you can debate the validity of it, but in the 70-20-10 model, whereby 10% of what we learn is done in a classroom, 70% of learning is done on the job. It's in the experiences that we have in life. It's the interactions, it's the social learning, it's copying your neighbor, it's listening to the podcast on a walk at lunch. And I think we need to really drive our own learning. However, saying that, learning at work should be perceived as work, and it's not always done that. And there is an incredible opportunity for managers to be allies and leaders to be activists around learning, to role model. I'm blocking my calendar for an hour today. That's my learning hour. That's my hour of power for learning. And show people that it's safe to learn. It's good to learn. Learning at work is work. And while I'll always believe it's on the individual, there are certain mechanisms in a company that you can deploy. You can give people training days. You can give people study leave. You can give people coaching, mentoring, guidance, etc. Because not everyone I think has galvanized that learning muscle. But really, I do believe that learnability and the ability of people to be metacognitive and learn is going to be a key differentiator for humans in the future of work.
Interesting. I'm just going to riff off that as well, Joe, and maybe it's a question now to you, Cyril. Is it the fact that we feel, one of the biggest barriers is skills capability and learning is because this technology, as opposed to mobile, cloud, social, where I guess the risk and the harm was not as great. You could argue, cloud and cyber is important and social media and psychology. Yep. But I guess with all the inherent misunderstanding and dangers of AI, do you think, therefore, organizations, like, Joe talks about learning at work, because of this technology is often being banned, and I know firsthand when I run workshops with a lot of enterprise organizations, they go, no, we've banned OpenAI, we've banned Copilot, we've banned Gemini, because we're still trying to understand and figure out the policy. It doesn't give the opportunity for individuals, as Joe said, to learn at work because they can't access those tools. What's your thoughts on that, Cyril?
That's a good point. I think it goes back to something Joe mentioned that really sat well with me. It's about your personal development as well. And as she mentioned, work is work. Yes, works could have barriers to softwares or technologies that they deem to be not fit for the organization or in line with the business strategy. But that doesn't mean you need to stop yourself from that continuous learning. If there's a passion for you with technology, even cyber, for example, you said, or psychology, you can actually read about how AI is improving psychologists around the world in analyzing patient data, for example. Or with cybersecurity, how is AI there mitigating even a cyber phishing attack to an organization? This could be something that you learn, that you may not need the appropriate AI tool within the organization, but some of the learnings could be actually implemented in a different way within the existing organization and for your own personal growth. And I'm a strong believer about how well you grow as a person and how much do you learn. That's why I've been jumping around with my own education with different things from finance to psychology to different things. It goes back to your personal interest of how well you position yourself and how well you want to learn. Yeah.
No, it's a really good point. There's no excuse. I see a couple of people accidentally putting their hands up. By all means, if you want to ask a question, use the Q&A and we'll definitely have time to answer them. Because the last question for you, Joe, which I'm sure we'll get to expand on as well. This one's all about AI adoption and innovation. Can you share some examples of companies that foster innovation for AI? What lessons they've learned, or what stories you can share with the audience?
Yeah. And when looking at companies that I've partnered with, been exposed to, I have mentors in that are helping me on my kind of AI adoption and experimentation journey. There's one prevailing theme, that keeps coming up, and that's around organizational culture and the pivotal role it plays and the permission to fail and experiment. Where you have a culture that is supportive, that encourages innovation, risk taking, and continuous learning, that is the absolute bedrock of how you will integrate AI technologies and ways of thinking, in an organization. And there's a couple of companies that are inspiring to me, and I'm sure we have some people that are on the call today from these companies. But like, if you think about, Amazon's day one philosophy, where you're encouraged to maintain this startup mentality, no matter what day it is, and where they're encouraging constant innovation and agility, it's really enabled Amazon to continuously integrate AI into its operations, from recommendation engines to even things like, if you've seen them, I spent some time in them in Seattle recently, in the Amazon Go stores. I find them a little bit complex to get into, but I'm getting there. I'm not a full Luddite. Another example is IBM. They really have this culture of open innovation, collaboration. You've seen some of their initiatives around Watson, their AI open scale platform, where they're actually letting their clients experiment with and scale AI applications. And for me, that just is such a nod to culture of transparency, ethical, AI use. And it's really helped IBM stay at the forefront of a lot of this. And if you one report I like to read, as geeky as that sounds, every year, is the LinkedIn Learning Report.
Oh, interesting.
And it shows, it really shows that year on year, the stats just don't change, that strong learning cultures in an organization, you see things like people are 90% more likely to innovate. And that's just going to be non-negotiable now in this age of AI. And what you need here really is this leadership commitment, the communication of the strategic importance of AI, and investing in your people. And I think that, supportive environment that says it's okay to safely fail and learn from that. And there's a quote that I absolutely love from the latest book of Amy Edmondson. It's on her back cover, I think, which says, all of us are fallible. The question is whether we use our mistakes as opportunities for growth, or we let them defeat us, and whether we use that fallibility for a life of never-ending learning. And if we're serious about AI, we have to be serious about failure and learning as well.
Right answer. Thank you. And last question for Cyril before I jump into the Q&A, and it's a segue to learning and development. Obviously, traditionally, learning and development business units within organizations have a very reactive, service-based, transactional role, right? Said business unit would go to L&E, go, my team needs this. L&E would go, right, here's a vendor, here's some training, and a very sort of reactive model. How do you think L&D individuals and business unit within an organization can actually switch that and become more proactive business partners to drive that strategic workforce implementation and transformation, given the speed at which this particular emerging technology is traveling at?
That's a really good question, Amir. As we've been discussing on how leaders and businesses can be the change makers within an organization, I think L&D can be the pivotal person in that chain to bring about that strategic thinking, even in the leadership. And the way to sort of incorporate such ideas even into the leadership, as a lot of leaders, senior leaders in the business, are hesitant to rapid changes in business strategies and goals. It becomes the role of the L&D teams to sort of then innovate and bring about ideas and changes that sort of align with business strategies. So when there's a continuous learning program or a professional development within the organization that closely aligns with the business goal and strategy, it makes it a bit more accessible across the organization, not just for its employees, but it's for its leaders or anyone. That sort of brings about that creativeness within the organization to say, yeah, these are the things that the business provides. And to back to the point of what Joe mentioned, it increases creativity and productivity within the organization, because continuous learning is what is going to help the business increase its own productivity. Instead of finding new roles and advertising for new roles, if a person within an organization could upskill and grow into that, that's as much as a value as someone that you freshly hired into the business, right? In fact, actually, they have the learnings from the business, so they already know the business. So I do believe L&D play a pivotal role in terms of aligning the business strategy. The other point that I would want to sort of raise is identifying that skill gaps within the organization. It not necessarily have to be in the path of an AI, but L&D sort of have these learnings, and that's why the L&D teams build LMS platforms and courses that are sort of in line with the business strategy and business objectives in general. So by way of sort of having those conversations with senior leadership, aligning themselves with goals and objectives, they can actually create meaningful courses and stuff for people to learn. And the other one is obviously helping the leadership in the business back. As a catalyst, L&D teams can provide meaningful data that can drive decisions to say, okay, there has been 150 people that have actually taken a particular liking to a course that the L&D teams have sort of innovated. Maybe there's something there for the business to explore as an opportunity, giving more strategic thought to those processes or implementing new processes alongside that. And more than that, it actually creates a collaborative learning environment for the business, right? Where it brings about everyone, irrespective of their sort of cadence within the organization, to sit at the same table and learn the same things that everyone can learn and bring about that change. And Amir, just not to put you on the spot, but at the same time, as the Chief Experience Officer at Academy XI, I think experience means a lot to how we deliver meaningful experiences for our clients. What do you think is the key driver there?
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's a good segue to the question that Mohammed asked, is all around creativity. But first, maybe around experience. I think, especially in the education space, AI is going to make it have a pivotal play. So one of the things we've discussed, and I'm sure Cyril knows, is that, you now have learning happening synchronously and asynchronously, right? People are learning at 12 midnight, so 3 a.m. in the morning because they're a night owl. And sure, there's learning management system, LMSs that have content and videos, but at some point, individuals who want to learn have questions. They want to ask a subject matter expert. At the moment, that's limited, right? It's not a scalable model. If I've got a question I want to ask Joe, I need to make sure I make an appointment with Joe, or I need to make sure Joe's online so I can ask a question. But imagine a student experience where you've got AI agents that are fully trained on your education material and subject matter, that are there and shadowing you, and they're almost like your virtual coach and mentor. So as you're learning, you can turn around and go, well, I don't actually understand this topic a little bit. Turn around, ask the coach, the virtual coach, something, and have that meaningful conversation. And some of these agents are becoming phenomenal. And I'm not just talking text-based chatbots. We've got now, real life avatars that you can start to communicate with, that you can almost not tell the difference between a human element, between a human and an AI agent. So I think, and I was going to actually pose this question and potentially answer it first if my light decides not to die on me. Mohammed asked a really good question, and that's really close to my heart. Do you think relying too much on AI is killing individual creativity? I get you to answer both, but at a personal level, I've been a creative for over 25 years, and I can tell you for the first time ever in my 47-year, life, creativity has become an even playing field. Individuals who previously didn't have access to such technologies or have access to be creative now have these tools at their fingertips, right on their phone, that allows them to practice that creativity that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. So I actually personally think creativity will actually, across the board on average, will be uplifted. Sure, people who used to be creative writers may lose their jobs, or people who used to write, movie scripts may lose their jobs because now you've got an AI doing that. But it goes back to my stats previously that, 23 to 25% of jobs will change. So we need to be able to be ready to ensure that we can use those technologies to our advantage. So instead of losing that job, we can just pivot to the new future, to the future work. But maybe Joe, because I've got you on the screen, and maybe this is a philosophical question. What is your thoughts on the fact that these emerging technologies like AI is killing the individual creativity?
It's so interesting because I feel like everyone has an opinion. And one day it's killing creativity, one day it's enhancing creativity beyond any believable boundaries. And the best way I've heard recently of framing this is at a conference I was at in Microsoft maybe 2 weeks ago, where they said that AI is an enhancer for creativity if we use it as co-pilot, not autopilot. And for me, this is the critical differentiator. Nothing annoys me more these days than an email where I think, you could have just asked ChatGPT to reach out themselves, where it's full of esteemed and it's hyperbolic and it's Shakespearean and irrelevant. But I think why I believe it can make us more creative is it can just give us a little bit more space. How much time do creatives, spend on kind of just getting started, getting pen to paper and just going? And I think it's that ignition. But what it really needs is that critical thought. It really needs the ability of someone to stand back and still honor what creativity is and not get into that autopilot mindset of I have someone else doing it for me, because it makes for a less enjoyable human life. Someone shared with me recently that there was at a certain time of year, everyone goes nuts about commencement speeches in the US and who said what, and what's Federer saying about how many points you need to win in a match. And I really liked his one, by the way. But they passed some of them in Chat GPT, and they found out that at their root, about 30 of them were identical. And for these critical inflection points in people's life, I don't think we can default to AI in the way that we are. So the onus is on us to let it speed us up, but not let it replace our creativity.
Not replace us. Great point. Before I look, we've sort of out of time, but I'm happy to go for another 5 to 10 minutes if Joe and Cyril are. Before I do, I actually wanted to share this screen, so hopefully people can see. By all means, I think I've put this up just so you can get in touch with RandomWalk. So RandomWalk have an amazing AI readiness tool that only takes about 15 minutes to help your organization understand where you're at. There's a QR code there, and obviously RandomWalk also provides AI training for corporates. So I'll keep this on the screen. But while we do that, probably a couple more questions, both from Paul. So obviously Paul's been very active here. Fantastic. And I'm thinking which one I ask first. Actually, I'll ask the second one. It's probably more interesting, and maybe I'll start with you, Cyril. Multi-generational workforce, right? We know the world is in general getting younger and older. I wish they were getting younger. That's my wish. But you now have, people within an organization that traverse a generation, maybe even a couple of generations. What's your thoughts on the fact that you've got a bigger chasm of age within an organization and the ability to adapt this new technology, especially at the leadership or the leadership skills required? Is there going to be a challenge for organizations to be able to manage the gap in age and that multi-generational workforce?
That's a really good question, Paul. And I think that is an opportunity here. Rather than a challenge, I see an opportunity. Looking from a mentoring lens, I think this is going to be a mentorship and a reverse mentorship relationship. The age groups, the different age groups, they might have technology challenges. The younger age group are probably in line and in tune with the technology. I think it's going to be mutually beneficial for them to work together. So the generation gap, or the Gen X, could have a better view on how the business works, what is more strategic, and the younger generation could add that sort of collaborative mind on how to better use technology for the workforce. In terms of leadership, it's the same. As any leadership team, I don't think there's a particular age group of people sitting across the table. There's diverse age groups. I think it's an opportunity to collaborate and work together and find those gaps in the system. We don't want to have people across the table with the same skill set, right? We want people with diverse skill set across the table to contribute to the betterment of the business and their own professional learning. So I think it's an opportunity as a leader and as a business if there's a diverse age group, because it complements more learning, more collaboration, and that innovation as well.
No, thank you. I'm just wondering, Chan from RandomWalk, so we're happy to keep going for another couple of minutes. Oh, I think I need to unmute Chan, but maybe she can message me. But I'll ask one more question because I need to navigate the multiple windows. I'll probably answer this one and then I can open it up to everybody else. Paul's asked, is there a risk and pressure of using this emerging technology and overriding the safety element? And look, again, without sharing too many stats, we know when first generative AI came about, it opened, ChatGPT. Companies such as Samsung opened that up to their staff members, and there was an IP issue where a staff member uploaded a piece of intellectual property as a way to be able to then use prompts and unpack, not knowing that technology was actually using anything prompted for its training data. Those features are now set where you can actually turn off those learning capability within these technologies. And that comes to teaching individuals that those features exist or how large language models work. And so I think the pressure to use over safety can be easily addressed when individuals understand the repercussions of those technologies and therefore how to use it safely. For me, that's just a very simple education question. I don't know, Joe, just quickly, do you have any opinions on that before I think I'll wrap up, but maybe we finish off with that.
Yeah, it's such a big, hot topic. And I think, again, it speaks to the critical thought element. Like, if you're sharing material, if it's IP, if it's company data, that's not something that you should be doing. But again, this is also new. We have different generations in the workforce, different perspectives on privacy, on data. It really speaks to the need in companies of an AI steering committee from all areas of the business, and an AI policy around what you can and cannot do. And I think always, my thinking here is to default to the most ethical option. And we see certain countries, geographies, continents around the world have excellent data protection legislation. And I think that's the way in which we're going. So we should be defaulting to the highest possible standards, that we can. And there was a good question by Paul around the fact that we cannot pursue competitive advantage and neglect safety measures, thorough testing, ethical guidelines. We're risking things like biased algorithms, privacy breaches, and other huge ethical dilemmas. And the onus is on us, I think, to have critical thought, but to look to company and leadership to create frameworks that promote ethical AI development and mitigate it against hasty adoption.
That's a good point. Thank you. I can see people are still on the call, so I'm happy to keep asking questions if it's okay. Mohammed's asked a good one here, which I'll answer because it's a topic, Mohammed, that we cover in the workshops that we run. So, Mohammed asked, currently it seems that AI doesn't have a mind of its own, but it can just recreates data and regurgitates. But, however, behind the scenes, there might be more advanced AI with self-learning capability. Well, one of the things I often share in the workshops that we run is there's three phases of AI. You've got what's known as narrow intelligence. Narrow intelligence is basically an AI agent, be able to complete very, very mundane tasks, transactional tasks, like you give it a prompt, it gives you an answer back. One thing that people are starting to talk about, and Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, It talks about, AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and that's systems and agents that are able to mimic and do every piece of task that a human can do, including creativity, and some would argue maybe even more. And then we've got singularity, or self-learning superintelligence. That's when from your movies of robots taking over the world potential will come. I think people don't realize, with the amazing tools that we have at hand at the moment, we are still only at the narrow intelligent phase, right? We are so far yet to go, a good 2 to 3 years in terms of getting to that AGI. But to, I think, Joe's point, organizations, UNESCO, the EU Act on AI, Joe Biden's executive order, we've got, laws being passed in Australia, we've got ISO standards internationally. I think there is so much focus on ensuring ethical and safety use of this technology, Joe, and I'm keen to hear, well, actually, Cyril, maybe for you, is that I'm optimistic that we will put guardrails in place. And with any technology, evil will always be there in the background trying to do evil things. But I think we are probably more prepared because we understand the complexity of this technology, that hopefully, my optimism says, we'll have guardrails in place. And when AGI comes and where the singularity comes, it will become well understood across the broader generations, and we'll hopefully be able to use it to progress humanity as opposed to harm. But Cyril, it's a philosophical question. What's your thoughts on that one?
I think that's a really good point. I think we've watched way too many Terminator movies, and at that point we're sort of worried at that convergence point where we are. I think, like any other technology, the way I view AI is the same. You need to comprehensively test it, validate it, continuous testing, monitoring, and I think that's quite essential. I treat AI as another technology that's going to just help us get to where we need to go. So obviously testing is important, and Joe's already touched on those ethical frameworks and policies and procedures. And to add to that, I think transparency is quite important within the business as well, as to what the adaptations for the AI are. And the other things that would most certainly help mitigate some of that is continuous training and development as well, isn't it? Just to show what's best practices, make sure that people don't post what they don't need to post, or give prompts to the AI that don't need to be prompted, and maybe prompted in the correct way to get the best results that you require.
Oh, thank you. It sounds like the recurring theme at the end of this session was continuous learning, growth, capability upskilling is going to be fundamental to the success and adoption of, this technology by many organizations. So I think without further ado, I'm going to probably cut it there. I'm sure Joe's got a full day of work still to do, and I'm sure everybody else has probably got a full day to do. But I just wanted to, first of all, acknowledge and again, thank again for Joe for your time coming to us from Para today, and also Cyril from Sydney. Thanks for your time. And lastly, thanks to RandomWalk for putting this event together. Hopefully you would have scanned the QR code that I had up on there. Again, to take on the AI readiness tool, it's fantastic, only takes 15 minutes. And by all means, reach out to them to understand what sort of AI training that they can provide. But yeah, thanks again for people from Germany, Nigeria, US, Sweden, and pretty much every time zone. So without further ado, I'm going to bid everybody a farewell and goodbye, and wishing you the best rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I will stop the recording as well.